let's get over to our first presentation. Are we ready with our first presentation? There he is, Michael Mills. Michael, how you doing?
I'm good. How are you doing today, Brent?
I am doing very well. So you are CEO of Body and Mind, and that is ticker on OTC BMMJ. That's you, right?
That's correct.
You got the right guy. Good thing. How's your day going today?
It's been good. I love the fact that you guys started with a great coffee presentation, and now we're going straight into cannabis. So, what a great way to fire up the day, and really exciting to hear about the changes in the coffee business. And I'd love to tell people about what's going on in cannabis, particularly U.S. cannabis, where we're focused.
What a segue! Did you have that planned? That was an excellent segue. Thank you for that.
Coffee is a pretty important part of my day. So.
I wish I had my my nicer mug here, but just the standard office mug here. I'll let you take it away, Michael. I see you got your presentation up. Have
Perfect.
At it.
Yeah. So we're ready to go here, and thanks everyone for jumping in and listening to some updates about Body and Mind. We've been on a number of the Benzinga platforms, the virtual platforms, and really thrilled to be in New York earlier this year or just a few months ago, and actually at a real live conference. It was very nice to see people. So we're going to talk, I'll just go very quickly about forward-looking statements. We're going to talk about forward-looking statements. Please jump on our website, www.bodyandmind.com, and take a look at the full disclaimer if you'd like to. So I'll give you a quick overview of who we are. We started in Nevada roughly 6 years ago. And since then, we've expanded into California, Ohio, Arkansas, Michigan, and we've got some license wins in Chicago. So I'll go a little bit more into detail on each of the states, but we have a fairly simple approach to expanding our business. We typically look at applying for licenses in new states. We'll look at acquisitions if they make sense. And once we're working in a state, we'll use our connections in that state to really look for great ways to build on the business. We've generally grown organically. And, the vision's very simple. We identify low-cost ways to get into new markets. And typically that's been through license applications. So that's where we win a license application and then develop that application. It could be a cultivation. It could be a manufacturing facility. It could be distribution. It could be retail. We'll also look at ways that we can get into acquisitions and potentially optimize those businesses that we buy. We have a ton of experience. We have a great management team. As I mentioned, we've been doing this for 6 years. So we understand the cannabis business and all aspects of the vertical of the cannabis business incredibly well. What we find is that as we get into a new state, and in general, we've been successful in getting into new states as soon as they've opened. So we won our license in Nevada when that state was opening. We won our licenses in Ohio when that state was opening. We won our licenses in Arkansas when that state was opening. And you get this huge first mover advantage because you're in that state as it's opening up. You get to meet all the people, whether it's the growers, the manufacturers, the retailers, and you've got real feet on the ground who can help you develop the business. And I like to think that we're fantastic at executing. And if you go back and look at our presentations over the last couple of years, we've done everything that we said we would do, and in many cases more. I think one of the keys of every success, and we heard this from the coffee presentation earlier, is product. You have to have great product, particularly in this business. Consumers are becoming more and more discerning. Our product has won numerous awards. We've won High Times Awards. We've won Las Vegas Cannabis Cup Awards. We've got a pretty good bevy. You can take a look at the screen here, but we've won awards for everything from our flower to our extracted product to our edibles. So I'll just go into some of the states that we're in a little bit more detail. Nevada's our home state. It's where our head office is. And we have been there for roughly 6 years. We won one of the first cultivation and production or manufacturing licenses in the state. And when Nevada opened, it was a very, very small market. It was medical only. And I like to think of Nevada as a bit of a microcosm or sort of a view into cannabis, really what's changed in cannabis attitudes in the last 10 years, but more so in the last 5 years across the entire United States. And anybody who goes to Nevada or Las Vegas on a regular basis will have noticed that, 10 years ago, if you got caught with a joint in Nevada, you could go to jail. It was not a small offense. now when you go there's billboards everywhere. There's retail stores that are very accessible, and it's become a much more acceptable part of not just the Vegas experience, but the entire experience in general. And I think we were really, really fortunate to get in on the very ground level there. We got to know all the dispensaries. We have great growers who came out with fantastic product. We have great extractors who have wonderful extracted product. We built up a really, really strong local brand name for ourselves to the point where we sell all our flower before we ever cut it down. So we took all these things that we learned in Nevada and we started looking around at new states. And the first state that we looked at was Ohio. So we'd won our license in Nevada. We were up and operating. We had a good brand. We had great product. Okay, where can we move next? And Ohio was one of the next states that was opening up. We really liked the Ohio market. There's 11.5 million people in Ohio. There's less than 70 dispensaries. And we opened ours. We were probably one of the first dozen dispensaries to open in that state. And that was back in 2019. More recently, we just opened our production facility there. So now we can bring our Body and Mind branded product into the state of Ohio. And we're selling it at our dispensary now. And it lets us bring our really renowned extracted products, shatter, batter, butter, into the Ohio market. So we see the Ohio market as being a great growth driver for the company. We came into California with a couple of acquisitions, one very recently that I'd love to tell you about. We came in 2019 with an acquisition where we bought the Long Beach dispensary, and it's under the Showgrow name, and that was a medical dispensary, and then it's turned into an adult use dispensary, and we bought what's called a paper license or an undeveloped license in San Diego, and we built that up, and we opened that in April of last year. Both those markets, particularly San Diego, is a fantastic market. We continue to see growth out of that store, mainly because it's a limited license market, which we do like to focus on. And we give great service in that area. And then more recently, we just announced a definitive agreement for a dispensary in Seaside, California, which is very close to Monterey, and very excited to bring the Reef into the BAM family. Additionally, in California, just before I move to Arkansas, I know I'm on the Arkansas slide, we have taken a lease out and applied for manufacturing distribution license in California. So that we can bring the Body and Mind branded products into the state, not just for our dispensaries, but bringing our brand to many dispensaries across the state of California. Moving on to Arkansas now. We got into Arkansas again with our in-state partners at Comprehensive Care when that state opened. And again, this was a case of applying for licenses, winning the licenses, and developing a dispensary, which we opened in April of last year, and then a cultivation, which we built out a little bit later. And we actually just got our first flower from the cultivation in Arkansas just a week or so ago. So we're selling that in the dispensary now. So great to have almost a full vertical in that state. We do like the state of Arkansas. Again, it's a limited license state. There's only 40 dispensaries for a population of roughly 3 million people. And we see great things for Arkansas going forward. We announced that we were getting into Michigan with a full vertical earlier this year. The first step of that is a dispensary, and we expect to have that dispensary open either later this month or perhaps early next month. We're also building out a cultivation and production facility. We've leased a 50,000 square foot building. We'll take a two-phased approach to cultivation. So we'll start with about 25,000 square feet of cultivation. We expect to get that construction underway relatively soon. And then we'll do a phase two. Once that's built out and we can get some cash flow going from phase one, then we'll build out phase two for roughly 50,000 square feet of production. We love Michigan. It's a $1 billion market. The state has just seen sort of increase after increase after increase over the last year. And we really, we've looked at different ways of getting into Michigan. We looked at buying assets there. We looked at various locations, and we really felt that the best way to go in that state was to follow our plan, and that is apply for licenses, win the licenses, and develop them ourselves. So talk a little bit about financials. You can see both our total revenue and our gross profit have continued to climb. We had a bit of a dip in gross profit last quarter, and some of that was due to the fact that we are expanding. And as I mentioned, we've got a number of licenses that we've got on the go. We've got the California manufacturing license, Michigan dispensary license, Michigan cultivation, Michigan production, and those will have a bit of a push down on gross profit. But as you can see, we've continued to grow on a revenue basis. We see the new licenses as we bring them on having additional growth on revenue, fairly significant as we start to greenlight these various operations that we're working on right now. When we talk about year-over-year increases, I think this is really where we start to shine. Our revenue and I need to explain that our fiscal year end ends in July 31st. So fiscal 2021, which ended July 31st of 2021, was up over 300% over fiscal year 2020. So we've seen some great increases over the last year, and really looking forward to bringing these new projects on. So talk a little bit about our balance sheet. We've got about 48 million in total assets. Our reported revenue for fiscal 2021 was just over 26 million, or just under 27 million. We were cash flow positive for Q4. We were also profitable for Q4. So even though we're spending a fair amount of money on growing the company, on developing these assets and developing these licenses, we were able to turn a profit, which in this industry has been a challenge based on some of the tax issues, and a lot of money going to growth. Talk a little bit about the leadership team. Myself, president, CEO, director. I've had 25 years of experience in numerous roles across a number of different industries. I've worked in finance, I've worked in manufacturing, I've worked in media and technology. I worked for the Financial Post newspaper, which is similar to the Wall Street Journal, for roughly 10 years. Our COO, Trip Hoffman, has a really interesting past. He came from the fund industry. He was a CEO of a fintech company. And he was living in Colorado as Colorado started to turn, there and be the first state for legal cannabis. And he looked at it and he thought, wow, that's a huge opportunity. And decided that he was going to learn everything that he could about the business, and went in and took literally a Craigslist trimmer job at one of the new operations there, and ended up learning the entire business. Well, he's a very smart guy. Within not that long, he was running the entire operation. He was writing software to optimize the operation, and eventually became part owner of the operation. His ability to understand everything from the cultivation side, which has, which you really need to have a strong knowledge base of, to bring our team up to a very high level, not just for quality of product, which we have, but for anticipating any challenges that are coming down the line. He's kind of seen it all, and his ability to work with our staff and build sticky teams and drive our operations, I think, is one of the reasons that we are cash flow positive. We have turned a profit in the last quarter. We've always been good stewards of capital. We've always been very efficient in the way that we run our operations and the way we look at opening new operations. And Trip's ability to impart his wisdom and build a strong team with a really, really good culture and a strong knowledge base is highly impressive. Dong Shim is our CFO. He's been the CFO of a number of different publicly traded companies, and he's been a great resource as the company's grown. And when you talk about a company that's growing over 300% year over year, you need to have skilled people in every aspect of your operation. And Dong's been a fantastic leader for our finance team. Alexis Podesta is another board member. She's the past Secretary of State for the California Business, Housing, and Consumer Services. And she has been just a wealth of knowledge and just a great person to bounce ideas off of. And Brent Reuter has been a director with us for quite some time. He's got a very strong banking background, strong finance background. He worked for Onyx, he worked for CIBC, and he's been very, very helpful as we've looked at various opportunities to grow the company. When you're thinking about equity versus debt, having someone who's done a whole bunch of debt deals that can be assistive is really, really important. So execution and milestones, as I mentioned, Like we feel that licenses are the lowest cost way to get into new markets. We had license wins in Nevada, license wins in Ohio, Arkansas. As I mentioned, we've been told that we've won 2 licenses with our partner in Chicago. So we continue to apply for licenses in the states that we're in some of the jurisdictions that are opening up in the states that we're in, and also new states that are opening. And there are great new states that are opening in the U.S. We look for value acquisitions to build the company. Obviously, when you're applying for licenses, it's a long process, but it's probably the most cost-efficient way to get into a new market. A faster process, obviously, is buying a company that's up and running or a license that hasn't been developed, and we're looking at those all the time. One of the key aspects when we look at acquisitions is, are we going to get a good value? Is this going to be accretive quickly? Is there a good cultural fit? And does it fit into our corporate strategy? As I mentioned, we've got a number of licenses that we're developing right now, and we've got a strong development team. I think that when you've got a team that's built out numerous dispensaries, when you've got a team that knows how to work in the construction business, who knows how to value engineer, who knows how to lay out efficient operations, your development timeline gets shorter and your development costs get a lot less. And we focus on that in a big way. And I've talked about our efficiency. I think that, our cannabis knowledge allows us to make all our operations highly efficient. And I think that the combination of our senior leadership team and our general managers in each of our states, really, it's one of the key focuses of the entire company is how do we get these new licenses and these new developments up to cash flow positive as fast as possible, and how do we make them as efficient as possible? So just in summary, why Body and Mind? We have near-term revenue growth with a number of the facilities and licenses that we're in the process of activating. We are well capitalized. We closed an $11.1 million loan this summer. We've taken roughly $6.6 million of it, and we've got a second tranche that's available to us until June of next year. That should fund almost all the licenses that we're working on developing right now, all our construction projects. We have a tight capital structure. We have just about 110 million shares outstanding right now. I think we've proven to the market that we are excellent stewards of capital. The last equity raise that we did was in May of 2019. So we've been bootstrapping the company and building and building and building without taking significant amounts of equity or diluting the company. I talked about our fantastic product quality. Anybody who's been to Nevada or anybody who goes to Nevada, please try our Body and Mind product. I think that you'll hear from the bud tenders that it's the way to go. We focus on limited license jurisdictions. There are a number of places in the United States. There's a number of places, really across the world, where the licenses aren't limited, and it gets very, very difficult to make money in those markets. I think we've proven that we're successful at our strategy execution as we've continued to grow, and as we've shown these 300% year-over-year revenue increases. We have a proven track record across a number of industries. We're able to leverage not just technology, but our experience to make the operations better. And we have a strong management team. So that's the end of the presentation. If there's any questions out there, I'd love to discuss them. Brent, do you have any questions about cannabis at all?
Yeah, maybe one or two, depending on the how long it takes to answer. But so I'm one of the news guys at Benzinga, and I feel like over the last good few months, the major catalyst that I've seen for cannabis stocks has been when we've been getting updates on banking into the cannabis industry, right? And so can you give us some of your perspective from your unique position in the industry, thoughts on federal legislation moving forward into 2022, maybe into 2023?
Yeah, absolutely. So, anybody who follows cannabis closely knows that yesterday there was a fair amount of hope that the Safe Banking Act would be attached to a sort of a must-pass defense bill. And anybody who doesn't follow cannabis, the Safe Banking Act has come through the House now 5 times. And the whole idea of the Safe Banking Act was to take the cash out of the system. So if you're a cannabis company, It's very, very difficult to get bank accounts, which means your entire business is done in cash. And it's a challenge for the cannabis companies, but it's a challenge for the local tax authority and the IRS because they have to take all that money in cash as well. So, what was really interesting was, as this safe banking, was finally attached to, a bill that could bring it to fruition. The amount of bipartisan support at the state level of attorney generals and saying like this is really easy. Let's just allow these companies to bank their cash and potentially get loans and operate like really almost any other business. The fact that it didn't go through is obviously disappointing. But then when I take when I look back, having been in the industry for quite a while now, if you'd asked someone 4 years ago when they thought cannabis companies would be able to access banks, they probably would have told you, I don't know, sometime in 10 years, in the next 10 years. So I kind of feel like, yes, this didn't pass at this point, but now we've got a Republican legalization bill. We've got a Democratic legalization bill. We've got legalization bills across a whole bunch of states. The attitude around cannabis has changed so much really in the last couple years, but it started 5 years ago. I think that over 70% of people think that cannabis should be legal in some form. So I think that, yes, safe banking didn't pass this time. The companies are still doing great. They're still growing dramatically. I think that the pace towards some form of legalization has quickened to the point where people aren't saying it's going to be a year or 2 or 3 years away. They think it's going to happen, much sooner than that.
Makes sense. Like to end it on a little bit of optimism there. I appreciate that, Michael. Michael Mills, he's CEO of Body and Mind. It's ticker BMMJ. And we have the website up there on screen. It's bamcannabis.com. Thanks a ton for joining us today, Michael.
Thanks very much, Brent.